Hi everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Precision Marketing for the Small Business Landscape. I'm your host, Erica Cook. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items to how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot example of the attendee interface, so you should see something like this that looks like this on your own computer screen in the upper right-hand corner. When you join today's webinar, you selected to either join by computer or by phone. If for any reason you'd like to change your selection, you can do so by accessing your auto pane in the control panel. Please note the orange arrow will expand or hide this panel. If you'd like to learn more about the content we are reviewing today, you can find additional documentation available for download in the handout section of the control panel. You may download these materials at any time during the presentation. All attendees will be on mute today, but you may submit questions for today's presenters by typing in questions in the questions pane of the control panel. We'll address these questions during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. A link to today's webinar recording and a copy of the presentation will be sent to attendees in a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours. Now, I'd like to introduce today's speakers, Tony Miglio and Grady Behrens. Tony is a former Claritas client with decades of experience in telecom industry. He is a product development manager at Claritas and is heavily involved in building products to help our clients understand their core customers, find them in the marketplace, and uncover the best ways to activate against both offline and online. Grady is the Director of Innovation at Claritas and works closely with clients and data scientists to build growth-driving solutions, including small business target capabilities. Having worked in B2B before in several different capacities, Grady has experienced the pain points of balancing accurate insights with required custom investments. So as a result, he's very passionate about building capabilities for fellow small business marketers to break out of the marketing stereotypes. Before I hand over the floor to Tony, I want to go over some of our pain points or get an understanding of what pain points our audience has come across. So give me one moment to cue that up. Okay, what's your biggest challenge when marketing to small businesses? You can select one, so either targeting small businesses in a scalable, resource-effective manner, engaging with the right content at the right place at the right time, knowing the interests of the decision makers and the channels that they use and they frequent, or basically having a hard time just getting them to purchase, customer acquisition. You just can't seem to close the sale. Or maybe it's all of the above where you're just starting out. So please select the one that's the most appropriate and hit submit. And I'll just give folks a couple of seconds to do that. And we'll see what the response is. Okay, I'm going to close the polls and share the results. And it looks like the majority of you just need help with all of the above. And so with that understanding, we're going to touch upon all of these, and I'm going to hand it over to Tony to shed some light on how to get closer to small business customers. Tony, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks. Can you hear me okay, Erica? Everybody hear me okay?
We can hear just fine, Tony.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, good afternoon and good morning to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Tony Miglio, and we're really happy that you're here to kind of listen and learn a little bit more about precision marketing to small businesses. This slide is going to kind of set us up for what we're going to be discussing about today. Erica mentioned before on her poll And it sounds like pretty much everybody was picking all the above, which is great because we're going to hit on all those components today, either myself or my colleague, Grady Behrens. So as we look at our agenda, here's kind of the 6 things that we're really going to be discussing at a high level. Small business opportunity. So, why are we even focusing on small businesses in the first place, right? So we'll frame that up. What's uniquely measured. So, we'll discuss some of the new business data available that's going to kind of inform our marketing approach. How can you benefit from it, right? So we'll talk about how what this new data means for a client and how you can kind of best take advantage of this information. We'll go into some use cases, which I'm excited to share with you. This actually will have some of the data from our small business survey, which just completed fielding a couple months ago. We'll be able to kind of showcase some of this data and talk about how it can help solve for some of the pain points for an insurance client or a technology or for travel. And then at that point, I'm going to hand it over to Grady, and he's going to talk about activation. So he'll really kind of deep dive into the crucial activation stage and discuss how this learned information will help activate. And then lastly, he'll round it out with the power of one-to-one marketing and talk about that. And then we can open up for Q&A. So I'll go ahead and get going on the presentation. So why focus on small businesses? Well, I don't know how many the attendee list is, but we probably have more than 100 people on the phone. Small business is really, really important, right? And what we know here at Claritas, looking at our Business Facts product, there's 15 million small businesses out there with under 50 employees. The sheer size of small businesses comprises the majority of businesses in the U.S. We know that. But it brings a lot of other great things in as well. Like if you think about like the overall client value, even though consumers and small businesses are very similar in some aspects, small businesses have a much higher client value. They drive better ARPU and things like that, right? We know that you're going to stay with us for a longer period of time, usually often due to contracts. So that kind of, once again, drives that customer lifetime value because we're getting higher per month and they're hanging with us for a longer period of time. And the one thing a lot of people kind of forget about are some of the intangibles is that, hey, when you have a relationship with another small business, what you find out is you can kind of grow and drive future relationships, which may end up benefiting you in the long term as well. So we're going to talk about some of these things as we move through. But the first thing I really want to hit on is something we talk about a lot here at Claritas is our understand, find, activate framework. And as we go through this presentation, I want you to kind of take away and think about these 3 things as we discussed. The first thing is around understanding. So who are the best businesses and what are the best behaviors that define them, right? And then how can we locate these businesses efficiently? With those first 2 things, we're going to hit on some use cases and talk about what small businesses do, why they prefer certain things. We'll talk about the defining piece of regionality in the U.S. We'll talk about channel, offline versus online. And that's the part that I'll really dig into. So the first half of the presentation will be focused around this. And then as mentioned, we'll hand this off to Grady to talk about activation, which is the main piece, right? You need to understand and find, once we know that, how do we best activate on this with all these insights? So keep that in mind as we move forward our presentation today. So this slide is kind of small. There's only a couple things on here, and I want you to think about this kind of the position in the marketplace today for people who want small business data. And you really have kind of 2 options. It's a struggle if you watch this, the struggle between investment and actionable insights. What we know today is in the world that if you want to have a lot of great insight, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you don't have that type of budget, then you're going to get some insights, but they may not be actionable. And you're kind of left working with things that's out there and available, like sales size or employee size or just some general things, addresses and stuff like that might be out there. What we're excited about, and you'll hear it kind of in my voice and Grady's voice, is we're excited to talk about the small business track because we feel that this brings a lot of kind of unique insights into the market and makes available for our clients. We went out and fielded a survey of more than 8,500 small businesses of less than 50 employees. That's how we're kind of defining small business for our presentation, and learn about the things that are really important to them. And if you look over on the right-hand side, we've added a bunch of things in which are not easy to find, things like channel preference and who are the decision makers in the business, why are they choosing it, and how are they researching things. All of these things that are really relevant to you, because I know everybody on the phone is thinking, wow, there are so many different variables. How do I reach these people in the right way? You know, one little thing could change up how somebody might purchase stuff. So as we move through, we're going to talk about how we were able to kind of reduce the investment for our clients, but also provide these actionable insights for the industry. So as we talk about this, the way I always kind of have a discussion, this is really about a purchase journey. You know, there's so many, like I said, so many different variables as we go through this on how we sell to small businesses. And the first thing is really about who those decision makers are. What's their function or role within the organization? And we ask questions about that. You know, are you the owner? Are you an admin? Who are you within the small business? And how do you kind of do things? So what's their decision style? What are psychographics? So we have 10 questions in the survey about psychographics. How do they think when they're thinking about purchasing? So all that's there. We identify what kind of criteria they're using to select. So maybe they're just price. All they care about is price, right? But maybe there's other things. And we'll talk about some things that drive, you know, the supplier choices, what their values are, and stuff like that are critical to their business. Also, how do they learn about you guys? You know, they can't buy from you if they don't know who you are. So how do they learn about you? Is it through online reviews? Or are they talking to people at, you know, a trade event or working with their sales team to learn that? And then finally, once you've muddled through all of these different things, what channel do they purchase in? Where are you going to best find these people? Where do they prefer to buy their products? Is it online or in person, or is it still over the phone? So understand these dynamics as you move through really kind of opens up what the purchase journey is. And a lot of these are very unique depending upon what we're trying to do. And we'll showcase that through the different use cases in our data today. As we dig into the industries, we'll kind of talk about this. How are we able to go and keep the price low, but get a lot of good insights? And you'll see from this slide, what we did is we had the survey, but we asked about different industries. So I'm sure we have people on from all 5 of these different categories, including banking, telecom, insurance, tech, and travel. And you can kind of see the categories of different products that are in the survey, so that you can understand the disparity between, you know, if you're in banking, between checkings and savings and lending services. People are going to act differently potentially for different types of products. And because we ask about those questions, you'll be able to slice and look at the data, understand those nuances within this. I think Erica mentioned at the beginning at the presentation, one of the handouts is actually the roster, the questionnaire. And you can go ahead and look to see the different things that are in here. So the question, why should you care? We kind of hit on this a little bit before. And the theme around what we're talking about today is kind of fishing where the fish are, right? We want to make sure that you're optimizing your time and your money for impactful results. Let's see here. So we talk about these different marketing strategies and product and sales strategies. And I don't want to read the whole thing over to you, but what you'll notice is that all these different combinations are unique. So as we move forward, we're going to talk about how we can optimize this and leverage this data for your marketing plan. Okay. All right. So my favorite part of the presentation is talking about these different use cases. And kind of keeping with the theme of fishing where the fish are, we're going to look at our first one, and this is around insurance. For our example here, what we're looking at is our first use case really kind of kicks off with kind of find actionable insights to attract and capture people in different industries. For our example, we're going to use hotel and construction. So think about someone who's trying to sell insurance to hotel clients and construction clients. What we know is that, or what our hunch is potentially, is that they buy things in a different way, but we don't have these insights. We don't know the different ways that they purchase. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this data to kind of understand how they work and operate. So here's a quick bar chart for comparing these different industries by channel preference. And blue represent hotel and yellow in construction. And you'll see kind of for in-person, they're pretty similar. But as you drop over here to kind of the middle of the slide, you'll start to see the different percentages, right? Over the phone is probably the biggest difference here. Construction is cool with that. 11% difference. And you think about like, wow, 11%, that might not be all that great. It might not be that huge. But if you think about how many construction businesses or how many hotel businesses are in the U.S. with 50 employees or less, there's almost 2 million construction people, right? So what that does, it kind of helps to tip the odds in your favor and say, how do these people want to be, worked with? How do they purchase? So having this information is really, really important as we go through. And I want to kind of share one more slide with you too. And this talks about the top reasons why people choose providers. And I didn't share price because everybody knows price is king, right? But there are a lot of differences on why people choose their provider. And you'll notice in construction and hotels over here for the quality of products and services, it's a pretty big, disparity on how they choose to purchase. Similar over here, if you look to the right-hand side, hotels are more about the easy online ordering experience. So understand how they work is key. And I don't want to dig into the data too much, but I kind of want to take away from this slide is the reasons why people purchase. This is really about customer satisfaction, right? So if you on the phone, if you do these things well, if you're trying to sell the construction for insurance, you better make sure that the quality of your products and services are good, or at least convey the message that they're good, or it's not going to resonate with these guys. So this is really about customer sat, and customer sat is really what that's going to do is going to drive retention, that total lifetime value we talked about before. And it's also, I think everybody else knows too, it's a lot cheaper to keep who you have than try to get somebody new, right? So it's going to be a cost-effective measure as well. So the good thing about this survey, I chose these two industries. You can choose it by different industries. You can choose it by employee size or sales, all kinds of different things. And you can understand the reasons that really drive people to purchase from their supplier, okay? So just a couple slides about insurance. I want to talk a little bit about technology. So another kind of use case, but in this situation, what we're doing is we're trying to understand regionality a little bit. We have a client who is looking to roll out a technology product to different parts of the U.S., right? And they want to understand kind of any geographical things that they need to be aware of when they position their products. Their hunch, once again, is that they're kind of concerned with the approach. They don't want to use a one approach fits all, because they know people in different parts of the U.S. act differently, but they don't know how that is. So we're going to kind of dive into how we can use this data to understand that question. So here I've got a couple states. We've got California and we've got Virginia, and you can kind of see how people in different states prefer to purchase their technology. The top bar talking about phone. Virginia is a little bit more, 23% versus 17%. Online is the leader in both states, right? In-person sales rep is kind of in California. One thing I think is interesting, a lot of people kind of lose sight of, excuse me, is that if you tally up these orange bars and the blue bars here, for California it's 52%, for Virginia 49%. We're always trying to push people towards online with a laptop or mobile device because it's cheaper for us, but roughly 50% of our people who are in our survey say, hey, I want to talk to somebody. It's really important that I talk to somebody to make my decision and my purchase. So I just want to kind of plant that seed for the folks on the call. We don't want to lose sight of that, right? We want to make sure that, hey, we're pushing them to a lower cost channel, but these things are important. In-person relationships are important. So if you think about this, what this could mean for somebody who is in California, this bar at the bottom with in-person sales reps, if they're kind of launched their technology product, what they may want to do is staff their people in the stores, right, with more people to handle, so they could talk one-on-one with a sales rep. Or maybe they have to have more people, sales reps on the ground, kind of hitting the pavement and talking to customers. But understanding this approach will say, hey, I can put more people on the ground here. I could push more people towards online here, or staff the phones. All right. So as we deep dive a little bit further, so we talked about California versus Virginia. I kind of want to even hit on this. Within a state, there's differences, right? So we saw from the previous slide that California much prefers to be online versus in person. And these are just counts from people in our survey. You know, business operations software, 222 online versus 115 in person. And you can see that orange bar is dominant for every single product. But as you go across, what I want to point out is the item in green here. That 1.9x shows that, hey, people prefer online almost twice as much as in person. And you can see those counts for each one of them. What I think is important, not only can you understand what California does as a state as a whole, but now we can even deep dive further and say, hey, well, let's look at each product. If I'm a technology product and I'm trying to sell data storage, online is definitely kind of the king, right? It's kind of the way that they want to go. But as you look at things like a business network server, what you start to see is that orange bar and that blue bar start to get pretty similar. What that tells me is the more complex this purchase, the more somebody wants to talk to somebody on the phone or in person to hold their hand, right? They want to make sure that they're making this purchase right. Me and myself, I feel good buying computers or software or things like that. But when it comes to a network server, I'm definitely asking for help. So it's important that someone who's trying to sell, maybe in California, they kind of frame this up and say, what type of product am I selling? This is my approach that I want to go after. So just kind of keep that in mind to kind of help refine your strategy. All right, our last use case here is talking about travel. And this is really kind of talking about how people can get their highest ROI. You know, we're always trying to get our biggest return on investment. And what we're going to do is look here, and we're going to kind of compare and contrast 3 really popular travel sites for booking accommodations and things like that. So kind of as we look at this, take a look at this bar chart. Accommodations, air travel, and rental cars. And I kind of anonymized them as travel site A, B, and C. But with the detail, we have about 15, 20 sites that we can help understand. And it's pretty interesting if you think about these. You know, I'll tell you the one in the light blue is a very, very popular site. And I was surprised to see the dark blue bar be almost 2 to 3 times as much for every single one of these categories. I thought it would be pretty close neck and neck, and I was really surprised to see it almost 3 times. This is really important for somebody who's in the travel industry. You kind of think of this, you know, when we ask these 8,500 respondents, these are business respondents. So these are people who are telling us about their business travel. But what this really means for somebody who's on the phone and trying to sell is that, you know, these sites, the travel site A, is much more popular, right? So think if you're paying the same amount of money to advertise on site A versus site B, you're spending a lot of extra money on site B and not getting your return on investment. So it's really important for somebody who's trying to kind of maximize their marketing spend and be efficient and effective to understand where the fish are. Where are these customers going to book their business travel? Okay, to kind of leave you with those thoughts on our use cases. So the last slide for me before I hand this over to Grady is going to talk about our key takeaways, kind of the things we've hit on through the beginning of the presentation. The first thing, fish where the fish are, right? Understand your most valuable customers in your target industries. And the great thing about this data, these 8,500 respondents, you can slice and dice and look at the data and understand the different nuances and intricacies of how people do different things, how the small businesses want to be sold to. We want to expand the impact of your marketing with the right messages. So making sure that we're talking to the right people in the right way. What do they want to see? What do they want to hear? What's important to them? Access unique insights to inform channel decisions. Yeah, this is to me, one of the most exciting things as our market has shifted from being able to either go into a store or just picking up the phone and calling somebody. Now you can buy things and you could do things in so many different ways than you could before. The market is shifting. The market is trending in different ways. It's really important to understand where people are moving to, but also not lose sight, like we talked about, that people still want an in-person touch as well. And then lastly, we want to identify your high-value long-term customers and the manner they prefer. So those are important. We want to keep and protect those guys. So we want to make sure that we're talking to them the right way, that we're doing the right things to keep them around for a long period of time. So Grady, I think I'm out of breath. Let me just take a drink of water here, hand this over to you, and we'll go from there. Let's talk activation.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. So Tony shared with us a couple of examples to get us thinking about how this new data can serve different roles in planning and strategy, and we really showed some neat things there across a number of different industries. So we looked at how we can understand and find customers, adjust strategy, and move to the opportunities. I'm going to spend some time now looking at really how the small business behavior track changes the paradigm for how we actually reach and engage small business customers. You know, earlier we were looking at that balance of investment that Tony brought up, that balance of investment versus insight. And I'm sure many of you feel that pressure, not just really of research investment, but of media and total marketing budgets and all of the other places that could use investment as well. I've had to make similar decisions before too, and honestly, I've been in positions as a marketer where the high-level charts like Tony presented were the best and in some cases the only information I had to make a decision on. So I had to make a decision with limited information about messaging and targeting. And some of you might have experienced that too, where you may have great first-party data, but the means of differentiating for targeting still comes down to industry or employee size or region. So you use those variables to actually do your targeting and positioning. You know it's less than ideal. I knew it was less than ideal, but we did the best we could given the resources and the available data. Still, I think we all know we can do better given the right resources. Think about what happens if we stop at what Tony presented as data for understanding and finding from the survey and start targeting. Let me use one of the examples he showed earlier about construction businesses purchasing an insurance and what channel they use. So if I'm marketing liability insurance to them, what call to action am I going to message with for construction firms? Is it going to be schedule a meeting or meet our team, call now, or one click away? At first glance, if we look back at the data that Tony showed us, it looks like since a majority of small construction businesses purchase insurance in person, that answers the question. But at 57%, as Tony was saying, only a little bit more than half actually buy in person, which means more than 500,000 or so small business construction firms are missed with that message. And that gets at really a core question here for targeting. How useful is a targeting strategy that misses nearly half the market? I could try adding in employee counts or region or all three together, but that doesn't get me to significantly better efficiency and engagement. And here's the way that plays out. Let me ask the same targeting question in a different industry, this time healthcare. They also have a mix of channel preferences when buying insurance. I theoretically, as a marketer, could use the same channel messaging for both healthcare and construction if I know which message to use with which business. But if we limit ourselves by targeting with industry or employee size or region, even a detailed industry code, any two given offices that share basic similarities will end up appearing the same. So out of the millions of doctors' offices in the US that are under 50 employees, two in the same region and the same employee size essentially receive the same message. Not only are we really pretty far from one-to-one marketing here, but you could be off message more than 50% of the time with any given business. The point is this, right? Tony wasn't trying to show us activation strategies in a single slide and summary views that we use for understanding and finding. We were looking at really that broad picture on how we start, but that can't be the basis for accurate targeting. And the depth of underlying data in the small business behavior track and data science is what can break down firmographics and move us out of that paradigm to get us to one-to-one targeting. So let me offer something as an alternative viewpoint. At Claritas, our data scientists have worked for decades on algorithms and machine learning that help activate consumers. And many of your marketing scientists and your data scientists have used our survey insights or consumer segmentation or behavioral scores to develop your own algorithms that target the right consumers for your business on the consumer marketing side. One of the keys of a marketer's ability to target one-to-one on consumers is really the availability of that granular behavior data, right? We're not talking about 100 sample size surveys. We're talking about the depth that allows you to differentiate next door neighbors into unique target groups. Small Business Behavior Track opens the door on one-to-one marketing now because of its depth in respondent data, breaking out of the box of simply looking at firmographics or firmographics plus employee size or plus revenue. Now we have the assets and resources to be able to one-to-one target. So Claritas has offered business facts firmographic data for many years. We already had a view of the US business landscape, like many of you, along with all of the underlying consumer or community and financial insights surrounding those businesses. Now, add to that a survey with 8,500 respondents, so deep enough granularity that you have the ingredients necessary to actually differentiate small businesses by behaviors that would otherwise be lumped into the same target group. This allows you to understand behavioral differences not just up at the planning stage, but at the one-to-one targeting level. When we start from those types of assets, instead of seeing two doctor's offices as the same, we look at hundreds of behaviors and dozens of differentiating variables to assign a behavior like insurance purchase channel on a one-to-one level for 15 million small businesses in the US. That also means we actually can take that industry blinder off, or employee range, or region for that matter, since predicting the behavior is the real goal, as opposed to assuming that the industry will exhibit a certain behavior. Now, instead of marketing to an industry, because of the majority channel preference in that industry, you're marketing to the business most likely to exhibit that behavior. Our method of doing this we call audience activation scores, since we're scoring 15 million individual businesses in the US for hundreds of specific behaviors. But it's fundamentally about granular behavior data that lets us get at the full picture of understand, find, and now activate. So Tony mentioned earlier that the Small Business Behavior Track survey was all about the buyer journey and the behaviors captured in that journey that can be predicted on a one-to-one basis. Those behaviors start with business profiles, like where revenue is likely to come from, down through purchase psychology, which includes preferred attributes of a supplier or the strategic value of a purchase. From there, research preferences bridge the gap from psychology to channel by looking at things like where they spend research time and the type of content that engages them. It defines the specific research channel and media used to find suppliers. And finally, we narrow down to who the decision maker is and what channel they use to complete the purchase. The journey steps here really highlight hundreds of behaviors available to use in targeting. And I think the interesting thing is this also starts to connect full circle back to understand and find, since these individual behaviors can combine back with purchase history or recent acquisition to create buyer personas that can be used across understand, find, and activate with the right small business customers. So looking at these steps of the journey, let me take a pause here and we're going to ask another poll question to the audience. Erica, if you want to set this up, we want to ask, what behaviors in the buyer journey are you interested in the most? What are those touch points during the small business buyer journey that are most important to you in your strategies today?
So I will give people just a few more seconds to select their answers. And I omitted business profile because business profile is kind of like category. It's kind of like a really high level of slicing and dicing, right? So really the core new insights are these other aspects. All right, so I'm going to close the poll. And we're going to share the results. So it's really kind of neck and neck, but decision maker and purchase channel is really up there for the most part. So with that, I'll hand it over back to you, Grady, to talk a little bit more about how we can dive deeper into these behaviors and get closer to small business customers.
Thanks, Erica. Yeah, that's interesting. Certainly some weight towards decision maker and purchase channel there, but answers across the board. And honestly, I think that speaks to the balance again between what we've maybe been able to invest in and where we were able to get the deep insights and perhaps areas that we're still looking for deeper insights. But yeah, interesting to see that emphasis there on the decision maker and the purchase channel. It seems like that's top of mind for many of you right now. So each of you have these different challenges that you just shared with us in activation strategy, and I think it's important to think about the points in the journey that align with each of those strategies, whether that's based on channel or decision maker or product or content or beyond. I mean, we've been looking at this channel strategy for insurance, and we saw how we could break out of the box of firmographics to really just target by behavior. But product strategy is just as relevant for either cross-selling to identify opportunities with existing customers, or theoretically building the persona of current customers and applying that back to prospects for customer acquisition. And finally, content strategy that can shape how we have our teams talking to our clients and understanding preferences for things like, is it customer testimonials that I need to invest in? Is it a thought leadership piece? Is it the product demonstration that I really need to have in place? That can really help us shape our product and sales strategies. All of these are driven by moving away from high-level firmographic filters and converting deep data in the small business behavior track into one-to-one action. And I'll speak for myself and Tony here, but as a summary, we're excited about the possibilities for ways that the small business behavior track can reveal new insights because of the many ways this data can be used, starting from understanding and finding customers all the way through to activating on a one-to-one basis. So this is just a few examples of ways that this can be used, but Tony and I want to thank you for your attention and looking at this and exploring this with us as we shared some of the new insights and capabilities around precision targeting for small business. So Erica, I'm going to turn it back to you to open up for questions.
Thanks, Grady, and thanks, Tony. Now we're going to answer some of the questions. As a reminder, you can submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. If we don't get to your question, we'll answer it offline as well. So let me review some of these questions that are coming in. Okay. How can we utilize this information to identify the types of businesses to target for things such as commercial loans and where to find them in their footprint?
I could take a stab at that, Grady. So I don't think commercial loans are one of the specific things that are in the banking section. Couple different ways. We potentially could proxy. One thing we didn't discuss, but with the survey itself, is we've identified 8,500 respondents that took our survey. If there are clients who say, hey, this is great, I want people who purchase banking products, but I want to know more about things like commercial loans, we can definitely do a recontact study and say, hey, we know the people who purchase banking, that subset of the 8,500. Now I want to deep dive and learn a couple more things about these folks. Claritas can definitely do a recontact and help get insights and work with the person who asked the question and say, hey, what other things would you like to know? And then we can tie it back to this survey to kind of make sure you have the new insights tied with the current insights from the survey itself.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Tony, we do have lending and lending products, not necessarily specific to commercial loans, but that could certainly cover.
Yeah, that's what I think, kind of a proxy. It's similar. It's not exactly the same, but yeah. So, good question.
Okay. Can you speak to the geographic distribution of the 8,500 respondents as it relates to size of towns? Specifically, this person who asked the question focuses on rural areas, and it's really hard to find data about small businesses in rural areas. Most of the surveys are really around large cities or suburbs.
Yeah, I can't speak to specific towns, but one thing we did when Grady and I worked on the survey itself, when we worked to design it, we had data scientists involved. As we moved through, they were involved, and as we got pilot study back, we actually worked and got responses back from 750 respondents before we fielded the entire thing. And through every step of the way, they're looking at and trying to understand, are we asking the right questions, asking them in the right way, and are we kind of doing this in a way that would be applicable and representative of the whole U.S.? So what we would find is, hey, we have state data, we have region data, things like that, and they want to make sure that whatever we were doing in our survey, we were getting respondents who were representative of the U.S. So I don't know if we can speak to a single town, things like that, but what we want to make sure is that the data in here is able to be tied back to what we know about business facts and kind of the distribution of businesses across the U.S. Does that help a little bit, I hope?
Tony, I'll add to that as well that when it comes to the activation score side, we are looking at urbanicity. So one of the tools that we've used for a long time on the consumer side, and that actually looks at the density of communities and how an answer is representative for the density of that community. But with 8,500 respondents, we're able to really cover all aspects of geography, as opposed to saying, oh, well, this maybe is representative for Illinois, but since we only collected 200 respondents, it's probably just Chicago.
Okay, great. And somebody asked about a copy of the questionnaire. Actually, I did not include the copy of the questionnaire, but I definitely will send it to folks who request it, or you can request it to your sales representative if you have one as well. And then the other question that's kind of related to that is, do you ask much about credit card purchasing behaviors?
So specific to what types of credit cards and things like that, I'm wondering.
Not sure. Nope, this is credit card purchasing.
For the survey itself, I don't think there's things specific about what types of credit cards. I do believe, Grady, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's part of our Business Facts product. That's one thing that they have been providing. We've been capturing insights around credit cards, right? So that's something I think you could, with an activation thing with B2B, SEG, and stuff like that, or audience activation, you could kind of use that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we'd have to dig into that specific question, but you're right, Tony. The survey itself, because it's about the buyer journey, is not necessarily about specific spend on credit versus invoicing or other sorts of specifics on credit card spend.
Yeah, it looks like for getting new credit cards, like what's the likelihood of them wanting to purchase a new credit card or add a credit card?
Oh, there is. Okay. Business credit cards are included in the banking services category.
Great. Is this tool for industries to identify companies in an area where there may be opportunity?
Yes.
You read it. Yeah, that's all you, Grady, right? That's exactly what you're...
I mean, I think I heard the question right. Potentially prospecting new areas, and straightforward answer is yes. Because we're scoring essentially every small business in the U.S., we could certainly work into, or you could certainly look into the potential for new markets or potential usage of products in markets.
Okay. And there is a follow-up question to that to get a demo for the tool. So we'll definitely direct you appropriately so that we can dive deeper and you can see all the nuances based on your needs in terms of what you want to look at. Let's see here, another question. Do you have an integration of this product, any top CRM product like Salesforce?
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
Do you have any integration of this product with any of the top CRM products like Salesforce? So I think what they're saying is, I mean, if you have your Salesforce database, if you want to actually code your businesses, your database for small businesses, you can definitely do that. And we can basically append the information, all of the insights back into their database, correct?
I think this might be more specific about perhaps like an app integration into Salesforce. I think this is something we could take offline, but our team at Claritas does have web services capabilities to build in direct calls, but that's something we can follow up with.
Okay. Can you score a specific subset of products that we're focused on?
I'm assuming from the survey, the different types of categories and like with banking had different types of loans.
Can you score a specific subset of prospects that we have that we're really focused on?
Yes, for some of the individual products on the survey, that's really the intention, was having enough of a base there to be able to do one-to-one scoring. I wouldn't say that it is 100%. I mean, in some cases, there aren't enough people responding to, I'll just use voice over internet phones that bought it on their mobile device. But in many other places, we do have capabilities. But we have over 400 pre-qualified scores coming off of the survey, and so I would recommend talk with your Claritas representative, and we can find the right scores to match.
Okay. How do these solutions enter into the online space and help with online capabilities or online marketing?
I'll take that one, Tony. So, yeah, we're looking into that. So, I'll simply say, please talk with your representative, and we can look into how to do that. On our consumer side, we operate on both the offline and online activation. So, that's certainly something we're looking into here.
Okay, and are there any sales revenue consumption metrics in the survey as well?
So yeah, so were you asking about like sales for each of the small businesses? Is that what we're?
Yeah, like spend between a certain amount on office supplies or something like that.
Oh, for specific products, no. We do ask about things like what are their overall sales. We do ask about what percentage of sales are online versus offline and things like that. But we don't specifically go down to how much of your budget was spent on printers or software, things like that. And the reason for that is the survey is really large, so we can capture these insights. We start getting down to that level of granularity, the survey becomes so long that people stop taking our survey. So it's kind of a play off of what we could or could not include. But I can understand where that would be valuable, and potentially that's something for recontact if we need to get this information too.
Right, exactly. I don't think we have any other questions today, so I just want to thank everyone for attending today's event. Appreciate you guys all taking the time out of your day to listen to us, and there will be a follow-up email with a recording and a link to the presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Tony or Grady or even marketing@claritas.com. If you didn't get a copy of the deck, I'm happy to send that off as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.